All right, so we're going to get this out of the way. So we're going to talk about CPS. Let's go ahead and get right into it. I was talking about TriStar. I made a little bit of lag on my system. What I want to do is lay the groundwork here for CPS and how it kind of ties into the full overall PLM. I'm not familiar right now with the audience and what you have in terms of any type of a PLM system or vaulting system, or if you're working off of a shared server folder, etc. But the whole concept behind CPS is to automate, and it builds upon the automation that's inside of PLM. And so what we basically find is that those who do have a PLM system generally are using it for vaulting. And what you see here is that there's so many more capabilities for PLM, for data management, repurposing your BOMS, getting into project and change management. And so when a PLM system is implemented and installed, sorry folks, I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm going to try to work through this best I can. Generally what you have is a lot of upfront costs with hardware, software, sometimes there's migration of data. And once you basically have a PLM system in place, most organizations we find generally stop at the CAD data management, but the return on investment really comes through when you start implementing and automating that engineering data, that base data, that fundamental data, repurposing and reusing and building upon that foundation into other areas and other departments. And that's where CPS is going to come in, that we're going to talk about today. So again, CPS builds upon the concept of automation, repurposing data, like in a PLM system. It integrates with other PLM systems. Primarily we focus on Windchill. It also integrates with other systems like ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, CRM, Customer Relations Management Software. And what we want to talk about here is why automate the engineering process. So generally what you have is from a lower level assembled a stock, let's say like for a mouse. Maybe you've got an inner and outer casing or housing, a mouse wheel, a circuit board, and you're pulling these parts off the shelf and basically you're assembling those based on stock. That's something that's very simple to do. It can have between usually a low number of complexity, low number of potential configurations. And as you see here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, as we move over from assemble to stock to assemble to order, getting into configure to order, and then engineering to order, what you find is generally it's harder to automate these processes. It's not as simple as pulling parts off of the shelf and assembling them and putting them in a box and sending them out the door. Building various configurations, sometimes engineering on the fly, these things generally take quite a bit of time. And so what we have found is the ability to automate those has become increasingly more difficult for organizations. So this is where CPS, Controls Pro Studio, our configure price quote software, comes in and helps us automate the process of these complex configure to order and engineer to order products, but it also helps to integrate and integrates with ERP and CRM as well. So this is where this new triangle, this new wedge of the rectangle comes in, and that's where we're talking about integrating the configure price quoting, the ERP and the PLM, and automating the engineering process. So essentially what we're talking about here is if you've got sales and they're out working with a customer and they're quoting the customer potential configurations of a product or variations of a product that you currently build, and then they're coming back to engineering and say, can we build it? Oftentimes what we find is engineering has to go through an extensive validation process in order to get back with sales to ultimately report back to the customer, hey, we can build this or we can't build this, this is or isn't possible. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to validate early on in the configure and engineer to order sales process on the front end with the client the ability to validate, is it engineerable, is it buildable, is it doable, and we also want to reduce the bottleneck that's on engineering to validate that, as well as the time it currently takes for engineering to report back ultimately to the customer, can it be done. So we're looking to validate early on, is something able to be built or engineered, and we're also looking to reduce the time to get an accurate quote to the customer. So essentially what we're talking about here is knowledge-based engineering. What I don't want to do is give you a bunch of PowerPoints. We're going to go through about 10 total, and then we're actually going to get into the product, and we're going to open it up for discussion or chat. Also, if you could bear with me as well, this is my first webinar using this particular software. So as you're going to bring your questions in, I'm going to do what I can to be able to answer your questions, be able to see them and answer them as well. So knowledge-based engineering essentially allows you to do what you're doing now manually, but capture it and automate it downstream. So the process of working with a customer, getting requirements, figuring out if those requirements are currently within the capabilities of the organization or something that you've already built. Also finding out information maybe from ERP for costing, etc. Essentially everything that you may be doing now to configure or engineer to order products manually, or a combination of manual and automated processes, knowledge-based engineering and CPS allows us to capture all of these rules, also build rules on the fly, and essentially build a large brain, or a neural net, if you will, that has some degree of intelligence and history to it. Whereas you're building these and quoting these different packages and configurations for your customers, it's tracking it from pricing, from different types of project information, as well as different types of CAD data, and ultimately to a complete quote package. So the quote to production process is generally we configure something, we price it, and then we quote it. And what we're really looking to do is try to rapidly consolidate and turn around that configure, price, quote portion so that we can get to manufacturing as quickly as possible. And while we're doing this configuring and pricing and quoting process or processes with our customer, we're wanting to simultaneously create engineering data that can very quickly be repurposed and pushed downstream to manufacturing, so that way we can get the PO and start building the product as quickly as possible. So that's where this engineering segment comes in. We're working with the customer to configure, price, and quote. Engineering kind of steps in as the middleman and says, yes, it can be done, and reports that back to the customer and tells them what it's going to cost. And then with those set of requirements, they push that downstream to manufacturing. So essentially where CPS is coming in is on the sales configurator portion. It enables us to automate the configure, price, and quote, but it also helps us to start making inroads and building roots into the engineering side of things that can be repurposed and then pushed out to manufacturing. So as you can see here, the CPS kind of modulates or breaks out into different sections or chunks. The sales portion of the process, the engineering portion of the process, and then ultimately the manufacturing side, getting information into ERP and out of ERP. And this is the complete CPS system. So the process, again, kind of reiterating what I talked about, you've got your sales configurator. It's built on rules and iterations and different types of analyses that we work with you to take what you're doing now manually and get you up and running with a turnkey system. But we also help you learn how easy it is to program and build the system, to customize it and modify it as your company grows and your needs grow. So that's where these rules and iterations and analyses come in. And then ultimately, as you're configuring these and it's going through these sets of rules and guidelines and processes and requirements, it's automatically producing a complete and comprehensive quote package. So that would include things like drawings. The drawings can be just 2D orthogonal line drawings out of AutoCAD or Creo Sketch or Creo drafting package. Or it could be drawings that are derived from 3D models, parts, and assemblies. And also the quote package can contain information out of ERP as well, or what other system you may have. So from the sales configurator, it's also able to take the data and push it into your PLM system, automatically creating SKU numbers, base configurations, configurable options. If you're using things like WT parts and Windchill, it has the ability to go ahead and start building those for you and populating the attributes, building your assemblies and all the parts that would be underneath it. So this is already not only able to validate, can it be built, this is showing you here how it's able to start making the inroads and putting the data into the engineering side of things, into the PLM side of things that can be repurposed and reused throughout the rest of the organization. And then ultimately, once this configuration is built inside your PLM system, the structure can be released to your ERP. And we're going to move forward. So from the ERP, it can go back into the sales configurator, and now you have this closed loop process that's capturing all of your different iterations, capturing your different configurations, and keeping everything synchronized and comprehensive. So what you see here in this graphic, we're actually going to get into a live demo with this, but basically everything pretty much stems from what's called the configurator. And what you're looking at here is the configuration definition screen. And so this is essentially where this interface is customizable and built to your criteria, where someone who is a non-engineering or a non-CAD person or an engineering person that might want a more simplified interface can work from a series of radio buttons, slider bars, dimensions, drop downs, whatever type of criteria or constraints you need to be able to define your product. From a simple interface, they're able to build these configurations, look at them either in 2D or 3D, essentially get the mock-up, and also get the costing data from ERP. But then once the configuration is built, with a simple click of a button or several buttons and choices, you can generate a quote package, and you can automatically generate your CAD models, your structure inside of PLM, your costing information out of ERP, and ultimately push that out to ERP, and then bundle it all together into a complete package. So here's a couple of screenshots. We'll get into these as well in the live demo. But you can see here, this is a configuration, this screen, this configuration analysis screen, is the next screen after you build the definition. You've got all your different picks and choices that you want, or you've even built some things on the fly like engineered order, maybe some dimensions. It can automatically create new parts for you. Even if those parts don't already exist, it can create them for you and push them to your PLM system, create your CAD data. This configuration analysis screen is a way of validating and looking at the configuration before you push it into your PLM system. And what you can do is you can compare your existing configuration that you've built in this kind of the sandbox environment, and it'll go out and search if any existing matching configuration exists already inside of PLM. If so, you can repurpose that. You can still push the identical configuration with a different name and number to the PLM system. You can repurpose it. Or if the configuration does not exist, you can go ahead and submit it, and that's the process where it goes in and through an automated fashion will create the configuration for you. So now we're getting to the end of the slides here. We're going to go through a few more very, very quickly, and then we're going to get into really the fun stuff, the demo stuff. The CPS platform basically is a cloud-based environment, or can be local. You have your server, which is built off of .NET, Microsoft SQL, and then you have different communications through the APIs of Windchill or Creo or AutoCAD, as well as any type of APIs or calls that can be made to the ERP system. The CPS platform can be integrated with Creo or Creo View, Autodesk products, Dassault system, SolidWorks products, just about any CAD system you want. It can also be integrated with Office. It can do things like be integrated with Adobe Pro to create different types of PDFs or editable or fillable PDF forms. And then there's various modules to the CPS platform, which we won't get into a lot of detail, but these modules are essentially the tiers, the building blocks that really work behind the scenes. There's also technology inside of these modules that can be pulled out and be repurposed for maybe specific applications that don't require the entire CPS Control Pro Studio configure, price, quote, sales configurator, engineering, and manufacturing configurators. So for example, parts cleanser. Parts cleanser technology is used inside of CPS in certain cases, but the technology for parts cleanser can do things like mass updates to parts inside of your PLM system. So let's say you want to add attributes to thousands of parts rather than going into each part and adding those attributes individually. Things like parts cleanser, tasks like that, parts cleanser can tackle by basically programming in or specifying the attributes that you want to have added to or even removed from a large block of parts. There is no limit. You can simply do that and run this app and it will go and take care of that. Other things that it can do is, let's say you've got family tables. In many instances, a lot of organizations have gone down the path of building complex family tables, only to find out later in a options and variants or a configurable type environment, a product in the environment of PLM, that the family tables become prohibitive and become too complex to manage. And so they'll oftentimes hire teams or a dedicated person or two to go in and extract out the geometry of those family tables as the individual assemblies. Well, the Parts Cleanser app can go in and basically pull out all of your configurations in your family table, all of your different instances, and make those as separate parts or assemblies with attributes and whatever information you need, and create them as separate WT parts right there inside of Windchill with the click of a button. So the library wizard, let's say for example you're doing things like piping and you're building piping mock-ups inside of Creo, and you've got elbows and fittings, etc. What the library wizard can do is analyze an assembly, and it can take some of the fittings or any number of the fittings that you have, elbows, bends, faucets, etc., and valves, and it will automatically push those to the library inside of PLM. The quoting, the catalog composer, and the component instructor modules, those are kind of part of the overall sales configurator. We're going to get into that. I'm not going to really get into the slides here as far as in detail, but this is just very simple breakdown of how the parts cleanser can basically break up large family tables into smaller tables, and it can do open and update all where used as far as parent assemblies, etc. I might have a few more slides that I wanted to get into, but I really wanted to keep the focus on CPS. One more thing I wanted to talk about before we do this is, again, CPS is about automating, repurposing, knowledge-based engineering. And so, again, that's really looking at your entire organization comprehensively, and specifically with CPS, the sales process, which involves multiple departments inside of your organization. So it's more comprehensive than just sales producing a quote for a customer. It obviously involves manufacturing, it involves engineering, and it can involve also quality and other departments as well. So TriStar has partnered with the originators, the developers of CPS, and we offer it as part of an overall plan and strategy to integrate your entire organization. We essentially look at your organization as one large database, with PLM being one of those. ERP could be another database inside of your corporate database, if you will. And ultimately, we see everything kind of stems around or ripples out from change management. If you make a change, it's going to affect the rest of the organization. It's going to affect manufacturing. It's going to affect engineering. It can obviously affect things, obviously, like costing and how to build it. And so you can see here we have in the PLM side, in the PLM leg of this change management center point of your organization, the configurator, the CPS software, and that's how it ties in. And ultimately, through change management, everything should report out into what's called now a dashboard. And essentially what that does is that's the ability to report data, trending data out of your PLM system, out of your ERP system, and report data out of these databases, out of this organization, that help you make educated decisions and help you understand and analyze maybe where bottlenecks are. So we're not going to get into that. That's kind of a topic for another webinar. We also have webinars on that. I encourage you to go out to our channel and look at that. We have things for our EAP, our Enterprise Access Platform, which the dashboard is built upon. And it talks about, we have another BDM, Bogdan Kadzilla, who's done some excellent webinars that talk about kind of the concept that we're showing you here. But again, ultimately, it's about streamlining and automating a lot of the manual processes that you're doing right now, a lot of the manual communication that's going on now between your organizations, a lot of recreation of data that's occurring from PLM into ERP and vice versa. So now we're going to get out of the PowerPoint mode, and we're going to go right into CPS. And so this is shortly after I just launched CPS. We're going to go through some basic screens. The webinar is going to wrap up here in a couple of minutes. It's already 11:24. It's not going to take very long to show you. We might go a touch over. I want to keep it open for questions. But essentially, the component, the concept behind CPS is to automate as much as possible. So over here, we have a series of existing quotes. And over here on the right-hand pane, we've got a series of existing contacts. You might have more than one contact, let's say, for example, on a particular quote. Or inside of a company, you might have multiple contacts and you have a specific quote for a company. Let's say your point of contact changes with the company and you're working on a quote. Well, you can do something very simple as highlight the quote, highlight the contact, assign the contact to the quote, and not only has it assigned it here visually, what you can see, what it's done is it's automatically taken that contact's information and repurposed it and repopulated it in all the other forms and communications that are applicable to the overall quote package have now automatically been integrated and updated to reflect the new point of contact. What I'm going to do now is we're going to go into basically building a new quote. Well, just bear with me one moment. We have a slight technical glitch. Okay, here we go. We're pinging out onto the cloud, so we're going to have a little bit of a delay sometimes. So you can make sure I don't get click happy. And what we're doing now is we're going to start a new quote based on what we call our military vehicle. This is basically the beginning of a quote. Here you can put in your client information. You can put in things like project name. You can put in like city. I can start typing, Titusville, and see how it automatically populates the name of the city. So these are shortcuts that we've built in. Basically, anytime you've ever entered a city or a state, and we even have large lists of this information, we make it as quick as possible for you to be able to generate these quotes. I'm going to go ahead and start a new quote and jump into product questionnaire. And we're going to look at a new vehicle configuration. So this basically, in this type of this product questionnaire, just very quick, what we're looking at is the products tab. And for this particular demo, there's two different types of products. For your company, you could have multiple products that are configurable. And so in this case, we're going to go ahead and choose a new military vehicle configuration. And now it's going to open up a separate screen that's specific to this particular product. So this would again be a screen that's specific to your particular product in your organization, whether it be one product or more products. And so here is this, what we looked at in the PowerPoint slide, this configuration definition dialog. And this is this very simple drop-down type environment where you can start picking and choosing. And as you can see, as I'm making choices here, it's doing things like alerting me, hey, I can't have a four-door cab with an unarmed vehicle body. And so it puts up, and this can be more intelligent, and it can also display this text as opposed to just hovering. But also what I wanted to show you is as we're coming in here and we're making these changes over here on the right-hand pane, this is coming out of the ERP information. This is coming out of your ERP system, this information right here. So it's all dynamic. There's no kind of clicking and waiting. Everything you see here is essentially dynamic, almost everything. We're going to build this configuration. And what you're seeing here is a fully rendered, fully built 3D model based on engineering rules inside of CAD. And you're looking at it and you're able to observe it here inside of Creo View, which is essentially embedded right here inside of this configuration definition page. So what you're looking at is not raster mock-up. You're actually looking at a 3D model that can very quickly be modified, reconfigured, regenerated. You can evaluate it. You can work with the customer. And this is all done kind of in this sandbox environment. But as we go to the next page, this can ultimately be pushed to your PLM system. So we can come in here and let's say we can add maybe a 50 caliber gun to the top. It's automatically placing this accurately based on either coordinate system locations or assembly mating constraints. All of this is defined and built in based on your criteria for your product. We can go in and choose things like different types of bedding, so maybe a medic bed, or we can do more like a troop carrier. And so, for example, if this troop carrier were to change in dimensions, or we had different options, that could automatically, through some slight changes, automatically be available here in the pick down choices. So you can see things like we've got customers who build commercial kitchens. They need certain types of exhaust hoods. They need a certain number of ovens that are either single or double stacked, ranges of certain widths with different burner sizes. We've got customers who we're working with that are doing shooting ranges for the military. They want a certain number of rows for being able to firing rows, how many people can fire at one time, the length of the, I apologize, I'm trying to do two things at once. So the length of the firing range, etc. So we're just going to come back to the configuration that we're able to build here. Excellent. Now let's say we've got this configuration built up. We've got some basic costing information. Again, this is accurate costing information coming out of ERP. We're going to go ahead and go to the next screen. And this is showing us here the analysis of the configuration. This is essentially what we just built up. And it's showing us here the part number, the description. And on the previous screen, I'm just going to jump back very quickly just so that we can talk about building things on the fly. If we wanted to do a custom bed, we can come in right here and do things like specify the length, the width, the height, and even pop in maybe the estimated cost and what we would want to cost it, and then we can, boom, go ahead and push that directly right on out to the analysis, the configuration analysis. So we're going to go ahead and move forward back to the screen. So here's our configuration. We're going to do a compare. This is comparing as saying loading one existing from our PLM system. So this particular configuration has already been built before, and it's showing it right here. I can select on it, and it'll show us, boom, here's the configuration, here's the costing information. And I can do two things. I can either go ahead and reuse this configuration in whatever process I want to use to repurpose it, or I can say, hey, I got this configuration, I want to go ahead and pop in the new number for it, and then I can do something like right here called submit it to the database. So what this would do is if the configuration didn't exist, or you want to resubmit the configuration, you can go ahead and push it, and it will create this structure for you inside of Windchill. I did one for a users group. I'm going to go ahead and bring up. We're going to enlarge this screen. And this is one I did for a users group, a PTC users group in November. And this was a configuration that I essentially built on the fly for the group. And when I click the button that shows here in CPS, let's see if I can go ahead and tile both screens. Let's see here. So this configuration you see over here on the right-hand pane, this is not the exact configuration. When I went ahead and chose submit configuration to the database, it automatically went into Windchill and built the structure for me. So all of this naming, the attributing, the parts, everything that you could possibly want or need or require to be built inside your PLM system to be repurposed was automatically created and built from this simple screen right here and pushing submit the configuration to the database. When I click done, what it'll essentially do, let's go ahead and minimize, is it can go ahead and actually build a complete quote for you. And basically now we've got back here to our products page, here's the vehicle that I built, here's the cost of it, and then we can reload it. We can push it out to something, let's say, for example, to Excel, and my recommendation, this is something you would push to another system or another database. So I also wanted to take just a couple minutes, I know we're running up on the end of the webinar, is just quickly going through, we're about 3 minutes over, we're going to target going maybe to about 5 minutes over, and then I'll open up for some questions. This is another configurator that we have built for a customer, and essentially what you're looking at here is an AutoCAD viewport kind of built inside of the configurator. And what you're seeing here is someone that's going in and choosing different types of manufacturers for the type of equipment, what size and model number of the equipment. And what it's doing is it's not only building the geometry for you where you can see the configuration, it's actually creating the AutoCAD drawings in real time. And it's also pulling in all of this other costing data. So we're going to skip forward here to about 10 minutes, and I want to show you how it's actually doing that. So if we go to about 10 minutes here, I'll do a quick pause. What you can see is here's the configuration and it being submitted, and here's another screen. This is give you an idea of the products. You've got hoods, fire protection, etc. like we showed you on the demo. What you're looking at now, I'm going to pause this is all of the manual processes that you would be doing manually to build, whether it be a drawing in AutoCAD, a 3D assembly inside of Creo, or doing something as far as creating WT parts in Windchill. Through the technology that CPS has, it's really scripting all of that out through the interface, through the configuration definition interface, and all of those picks and clicks. It's taking that logic and turning it into scripts, and this is actually making the calls directly into AutoCAD and building this for you. And so we skip forward here to about 14, somewhere around 14 to actually 16 minutes. I wanted to show you from that previous screen, and I'm going to go ahead and pause. This is the actual AutoCAD drawing that was created from this screen you can see behind here. Actually, this is the product screen. You would click on something, one of these products, one of these tiles here, and go into the configuration definition. And as you're doing that, and when you ultimately submit the configuration, it's now doing the layering schema, the dimensioning, all of the different types of line weights, the positioning, the view size, filling out title block information. Again, all this can be done in the 3D environment or a 2D environment, or done in a 3D environment and repurposed downstream to 2D drawings. So everything that you're looking at here, from the demo that I showed you with the military vehicle, and then also earlier in this video with the kitchen mock-up, it's not just for sales being able to validate a configuration. It's actually producing the engineering drawings for you. And then again, this information can be repurposed. So I'm going to let this kind of video run. I'm going to check over here. We're now about 6 minutes over. I'm going to ask if there's any question, or see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions at this point. I was going to leave it open. We've got 16 attendees. Certainly there's got to be someone out there who has some type of a question. And I'm going to type in, please send questions, please submit questions. We'll just wait a minute or two. If you have any questions now. And let's see. I'm going to put it in the chat. Here we go. Please submit questions, if any. So I'm very excited about this software. This is not just automating the CAD side. That's one of the most important, if not the most important thing that I would like to stress and emphasize. I mean, look at this quote package here that this generated. So not only are you looking at a complete quote, you've got a complete set of drawings and repurposable engineering information that can be used. And to me, that's very exciting. There's other options and solutions that are available that don't even come close to what CPS can do. They can only work with existing. I see that there are a couple of questions here, so just bear with me. I'm trying to see your question. Where are the configuration rules kept? That is actually kept inside of CPS. We can pull data. If you've got configuration rules already inside of PLM, we can extract those. We can even keep some inside of your PLM system, but we can also keep some inside of our CPS software as well. If you've got any questions, I'm going to go ahead and type in additional questions where we can get a little bit further. Let me just type in my email address, so that way if we want to have any further dialogues, Chris Stewart at TriStar.com. Please feel free to email me, any of you, and then also call me if you'd like to call me, 321. I'm happy to talk about this more and in detail and get whatever additional resources we need. Let's see. I think that's, I don't know why I'm having such a small screen. Okay, I see that you've asked that a couple times. All custom or any use of PTC? Yes, you can reuse PTC options and variants. So again, this is different than options and variants in that with options and variants, you have to already build those up and have those basically as building blocks in place. But if you already have that, we can repurpose that. What this can do that options and variants cannot do is do ETO on the fly. So I showed you there in the example where you can do build a custom truck bed size. So we can build that up to whatever level you need so that you have the ability to, while you're building a configuration, if you need to put in a part or you need to have something that's not already there, built and already mocked up in the configuration and then later submitted to your PLM system, it can do that. Also, what this is doing that options and variants can't do, it's integrating the rest of the organization. It's pulling the information from ERP and putting it back into the quote package so you actually have accurate costing data. So that's some of the very important components of CPS that you're not going to find just inside of a PLM configurator. So I think that was probably the only question we had. We wanted to keep this seminar to around 30 minutes, so currently we're running about 10 minutes over. I want to thank you all for your time. If you have any questions about this, feel free to contact me at chris.stewart, chris.stewart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T, at tristar.com. And I can put you in contact with the appropriate sales rep that I would be supporting to help you. We can also do custom demos for you on your information. That's really what we would like to do, is we've kind of shown you the concepts and what's possible. Really where it becomes valuable to you and your needs and your organization is when we start actually working with some sample data and putting together a custom demo that maybe takes care of the top 3 things that you're looking to achieve by automating the sales and configuration process or any portion of the technology that can be used in what you're doing day to day. And then basically getting a demo that we can roll out to the rest of the organization where the other stakeholders and the upper level decision makers can decide, hey, to pull the trigger on this thing and really start seeing some really big efficiency improvements in your organization. So chris.stewart at tristar.com. My number is 321-289-1965 if you want to call me directly, and I can answer your questions and put you in contact with the appropriate senior account representative for your company. And then we'll do what we can on our side as far as the team to work with you and answer any additional questions and set up separate calls. So I'd like to thank you. Happy holidays to everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for your time, all of the attendees. And we look forward to talking to you again about CPS.